Good morning, fellow commissioners, Chief Choi, Mr. Sibley, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General Mark Smith, Mr. City Attorney Carlos de la Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. It is 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Shields, Briggs, and Kalonji are present, and we have a quorum. Madam Vice President.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning, both in person and online. We want to ensure all members of the public can access our meetings. So if you need any translation services or accommodations, we encourage you to contact the board secretary in advance of our meetings as explained in our written agenda. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. We welcome feedback from the public during the public comment period, which will be heard during item 2 on the agenda. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. You can speak to any item on the agenda or any matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. As explained in the written agenda, each member of the public can have a total of up to 3 minutes to speak if you wish to speak on both agenda items and general public comment. If you speak about matters outside the jurisdiction of the Police Commission, you will be told that you are off topic. If you persist in speaking about an item that is off topic, your public comment period will end. While we welcome public attendance at our meetings, disruptive behavior will not be tolerated and will be cause for removal. You will receive just one warning, and if you continue disrupting the meeting, you will be asked to leave and be removed from the meeting. At this time, we'll move to item number 1 on the agenda, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief Choi.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Inspector General Smith, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Executive Director Mr. Sibley. So I'm going to start my comments today with 2 officer-involved shootings that we had this past week. First one on April 18th at approximately 03:45 hours, Gang and Narcotics Division and Metropolitan Division plainclothes officers were assisting Juvenile Division detectives in the service of a felony arrest warrant in the city of Torrance. The suspect who resided at this location was identified as Eric Franco Sanchez. As officers and detectives were attempting a surrounding call-out, Franco Sanchez observed a team of officers from outside from inside his home on his CCTV system. Franco Sanchez armed himself with a handgun and he fired at officers and detectives from the residence, which resulted in an officer-involved shooting. Franco Sanchez was struck in the left arm by gunfire and surrendered to officers a short time later. Franco Sanchez was transported by paramedics to a local hospital where he was treated for his wound and subsequently released and booked into 77th Street Regional Jail for attempt murder. One officer was struck by gunfire and treated at a local hospital for a grazed wound to his left forearm and released. No other community members were injured during this incident. A loaded black Sig Sauer 9mm semi-automatic handgun with ammunition was recovered from the scene. The second officer-involved shooting occurred on the same date later in the day, so April 18th at approximately 14:20 hours. This was in Central area and involved the Resources Enhancement Services Enforcement Team, commonly known as RESET. The uniformed officers responded to a call of a female possibly being sexually assaulted in the area of San Pedro and 6th Street. Upon their arrival, officers determined that the possible suspect was no longer at scene, and the RESET officers requested a supervisor to their location. As officers continued their investigation, they were standing near their police vehicle. An individual, later identified as Carl Harpt, approached within several feet of the officers. He was holding a knife in his right hand. Harpt was not the suspect in the sexual assault and had no connection to the radio call the officers were investigating. Moments later, Harpt suddenly ran towards the RESET supervisor who was there, raising his knife, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. Harpt was struck by gunfire and collapsed on the sidewalk. He was subsequently taken into custody without further incident. The Los Angeles Fire Department personnel were in the area and began rendering aid immediately. Harp was transported by rescue ambulance to a local hospital where he was listed in stable condition, and then he was absentee booked for attempt murder. No other officers or community members were injured during this incident. An 8-inch folding knife with 3.5-inch blade was recovered at scene. I also want to talk about the phone disruption I think many have heard about in our police facilities, and just add some clarity to what transpired and the impact that it had. So on March 28th, there was a power test of the server that connects our phone system. This power test inadvertently caused the phone system server to go down. This disruption affected the phone lines within police headquarters facility, as well as some phones at our Figueroa Plaza facility and our motor transport division. Fortunately, the 911 dispatch centers, as well as all the station facilities, phone lines remain unaffected. I just want to make sure very clear on this. Public safety has not been impacted due to this phone outage. Since the incident, Information Technology Bureau has been working diligently with Information Technology Agency to install a new server to ensure smooth functioning of our communication systems as we move forward. Over this past weekend, over 550 new phone lines or phones have been restored to most of the entities within police headquarters as well as motor transport division. They'll continue to replace these phones until they've all been replaced, and then they'll move on to Figueroa Plaza and restore those phones there. We had a significant event that I'd like to discuss too. As we know, street racing or these sideshows are not only illegal, they're dangerous and oftentimes result in serious injury or death. The Street Racing Task Force has worked throughout last week, but I want to focus on one particular day that was quite impactful. So on Friday, April 19th, the Street Racing Federal Task Force conducted a Vision Zero detail and deployed 2 supervisors along with four units. They were able to disrupt multiple street takeovers. They conducted enforcement and made a felony arrest for evading. That particular felony evading suspect was also under the influence of alcohol. Their efforts in this one deployment resulted in 52 stops, 61 citations, disruptions of 9 street takeovers, 10 citations for unlicensed driver, recovery of 1 stolen vehicle, 3 misdemeanor arrests, 5 vehicles impounded, and 4 Bureau of Automotive Repair inspections, 2 of which resulted in citations. We also had a significant arrest regarding one of the areas where we're challenged with crime. So the Westchester and Playa del Rey area of Pacific Division has experienced several media newsworthy burglaries from motor vehicles, beginning with 60 vehicles being broken into on January 20th. The incident showed 2 suspects in dark-colored hoodies. However, video surveillance did not show enough detail to pursue this further. But then on April 14th, another 15 vehicles in the same area were broken into in the Westchester area of Pacific Division. The Pacific detectives followed up with all the victims, but only a limited number of information was found from these incidents. On April 21st, approximately 6:56 hours in the morning, a radio call was generated at 118 Sunset Street, where 12 vehicles were broken into. Officers and detectives responded. Video was located and showed a black vehicle used by the suspects. Property taken from one of these burglary from motor vehicles included an electronic device that had a tracking mechanism. The victim advised that he was able to track his device, to an apartment in Westchester. So a follow-up was conducted to the apartment complex in the Westchester area, and to the rear of the unit, the vehicle, which had a striking resemblance to the suspect vehicle that they saw in video footage, was located, along with a discarded ID and a wallet inside a nearby dumpster. So this led detectives and officers to believe the suspects lived nearby. The device continued pinging inside a specific apartment. After a door knock, a female resident answered the door. She was extremely cooperative and gave officers consent and detectives consent to go inside the location. Inside the location, her son and his friend, both juveniles, were located. Detectives also located the device that was pinging inside the location, along with burglary tools, backpacks, ID cards, and credit cards. Both juveniles were booked for burglary 459 PC from motor vehicles and released to their parents. Based on their MO, the video evidence, Pacific detectives believe that these subjects were responsible for all of the above burglary from motor vehicles that is described. This case will be presented to the district attorney's office for filing consideration. I believe that will have a huge impact on the crime trends up in that area related to this crime category. I also wanted to mention the unfortunate the arrest of a Mission GED officer that was publicized this week. On Thursday, April 18th, Officer Alan Correa was arrested by our Internal Affairs Division as part of an ongoing investigation into the Mission Area Gang Unit. Correa faces charges of 2 counts of altering, planting, or concealing evidence as a peace officer, as well as 3 counts of petty theft. We take these allegations very seriously, and we're committed to upholding the highest standards of integrity and accountability for all members of this department. We are fully cooperating with the district attorney's office as they continue to, and we continue to investigate additional cases related to this matter. Moving on to crime, citywide for the week ending 4/2024 compared to 2023 year to date, violent crime is down 0.7%. Property crime is down 4.1%, and overall Part 1 crime is down 3.4%. We still do have challenges with independent categories within our Part 1 crimes, and those are our homicides, our robberies, our burglaries, and our motor vehicle thefts. So our homicides, there were a total of 94 homicides this year to date compared to 86 last year to date, so an overall increase of 9.3%. The majority of this increase is coming from South Bureau, and we're continuing our efforts there to reduce these incidents. I'm happy to say our victims shot for a second week in a row continue to decrease, for several weeks in a row, but we're seeing a negative number or decreased number in the last 2 weeks. So citywide, our victims shot incidents have decreased by 8.5% compared to 2023 and by 20.8% compared to 2022, and I'm hopeful that this trend will continue with our efforts related to recovering and apprehending criminals involved in gun-related crimes. Moving on to our robbery analysis, total robberies have increased by 10.5% compared to 2023, and compared to 2022, they've increased by 7.3%. Robberies involving firearms, this is what area we're focusing on, have demonstrated a downward trend since the week ending March 9th, 2024. Over the past 7 weeks, the year-to-date increase for robberies with the firearm has decreased from 12% all the way down to 2.3%. I will say one other trend that we're identifying and we have strategies to address are where these robberies are occurring. So we've seen a significant increase. Although our street and public or parkway robberies are most prevalent, we've seen a significant increase in what we call our Estes robberies, where somebody comes in to do a shoplift, they're confronted, they use force or fear to continue to remove the property. These locations, such as small businesses, restaurants, mini marts, clothing stores, liquor stores, gas stations, and smaller department stores, account for a total of 739 robberies, showing a 40% increase year over year from 2024 to 23. So that's what we'll be focusing our efforts on our robbery trend. Our burglaries, in comparison to 2023, burglaries have seen a slight uptick. They essentially remain flat, but they're up 0.4%, and they're up 3.2% compared to 2022. Again, commercial burglaries still show overall decrease of 1.3% compared to 23. And they account for 43.8% of all our burglaries. Our residential burglaries have increased by 1.8% compared to 2023, and show a significant increase compared to 2022 of 11.3%. And our residential burglaries account for 56.2% of all of our burglaries. Motor vehicle theft analysis week over week remains consistent. We are still seeing a slight downtrend. We had a high of 9.6% increase. We're currently at this week ending at a 5.5% increase, so we're continuing to see a downward trend in our motor vehicle thefts. We are also seeing the same pattern of the type of vehicle being stolen, with Kias being number 1, Chevrolets being number 2, and Hyundais being number 3. The increase is really being driven by the motor vehicle thefts being stolen out of Operations Valley Bureau area with an overall 27% increase in motor vehicle thefts in that bureau. Our personnel strength sworn as of April 22nd remains at 8,832. Our civilian personnel staffing remains at 2,645, and our reserve officers remain stable at 443 reserve officers. And that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We will start with questions from the commission. Commissioner Kalanche?
Thank you. Good morning, Chief. I have a couple of questions. One is related to the stabbing of the person at the metro station, which unfortunately the person passed away. So I have a couple of questions about our deployment, just for my own information. So our transit unit, are we deployed 24/7? Because I know the concern is that this happened at 5 a.m., right? So what are our deployment hours? And then do you know what the deployment hours are for the ambassadors that are obviously don't work for us, but are part of the whole like safety team? So that's one of my questions.
So I don't know the deployment hours for the ambassadors, but I know we do have 24-hour coverage on the lines.
Okay,
So
okay, that's good to know.
I can get you the ambassador deployment.
Okay, and then what is our response? Like, what are we doing to ensure
Well, the suspect is in custody.
greater safety, I guess?
The suspect is in custody. The suspect was apprehended, I believe, within an hour of the incident. When officers got there and put out a crime broadcast, they were able to locate the suspect. Our deployment on the trains, on the platforms, on the buses, as well as the ambassadors are a direct effort to increase our presence as well as the safety on these lines. Again, we can't be everywhere all the time. However, the effort to spread out and engage in the ridership to create a sense of safety and address crime trends or problems as they occur immediately and swiftly, and communicate openly to the public as well as the MTA board to let them know that we do take safety and public safety and seriously, and that we are aligned with their mission and goals of safer lines.
And just a quick follow-up. So so we have 24/7 deployment. Do we have the same deployment during like the early hours that we do in the afternoon hours? Is it the same, or I just want to make sure that there's adequate patrol and during the early hours of when some folks are, and I would say probably more of the lower income, community that has to travel at the early hours of the morning to get to, certain types of.
I'll say this much here today, is that our deployment is strategic based on crime trends and needs. It's not just a flat deployment, just to say that we're deployed. So we do look at crime trends, we look at ridership, we look at activity and deploy accordingly.
Okay, good. Okay. If you could provide us just a little bit more information, I think that would be helpful, just for our own knowledge of deployment, even if it's strategic, just to give us an idea of like what it might look like. Yeah. And then just to follow up on the phone situation, so the issue has only been to headquarters, right? And the Figueroa building, not to the divisions?
Correct.
Okay. And it didn't affect I know that 911 was not affected, but the non-911 lines were not affected?
The non-emergency, the 311, none of those lines were affected.
So mostly like desk phones?
They're administrative functions within the
Okay,
building, yes.
perfect. Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Vice President Shields.
Thank you. Commissioner Briggs?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, Chief, for the report. Question on the Vision Zero. You said there were 9 disruptions. Do you have the divisions they were in?
Let's see here. No, I thought, I can get them for you. I don't have them with me in front of me.
All right, thank you. And so the follow-up would have been, what are we doing in those specific divisions to engage, whether they're youth or adults, to try to find some kind of alternative place or provide even like discount tickets to some of the local raceways for folks to be able to do some of that in a more legal way if they're racing or if they're just general car enthusiasts and they want to go to car shows. Maybe we can help with do some of that. I get some of it is just general disruption of traffic, and it may not be that population, but there's probably a percentage of people that would be open to some of that and potentially serve as an alternative for them.
Yes, so there is a strategy of our messaging to try and reduce these things through social media and those other messaging portals, and also to give alternatives to community members that need an alternative place to engage in this activity lawfully, such as a racetrack or something. I will get you those specific details. I don't want to comment on them right now without having the full
Yep.
information, but I know there's efforts in that realm as well. It's not just enforcement, but it's education as well as providing opportunities elsewhere.
Thank
I'll
you.
get you that detailed information.
Thank you. And then regarding Mission Division, I believe it's still an ongoing investigation, but you mentioned an arrest. Anything else you can share on where Mission Division stands and their gang unit stand?
So their gang unit is fully operational and functioning. It does not involve the same officers that are being investigated, and that's really all I can say about it.
Thank you, sir. Please refrain from speaking until it's public comment time. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. I just had a couple of questions and just a quick follow-up on the individual who was arrested from Mission GED. Understand that is an ongoing investigation. That individual is no longer actually actively deployed with the department and is subject to the department's own disciplinary process. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes.
Thank you. And I had the same concern that Commissioner Kalanche voiced about the Metro very unfortunate death of what appeared to be a very unprovoked attack on a woman. And to the extent, and understand the deployment, and it sounds like we had made a lot of progress in making the Metro safer in recent time, and it's unfortunate that this type of event really puts the department back a lot and make people feel less safe going on the Metro. Is there any additional things that can be done by the department to help provide some more safety there? Again, these are a lot of the individuals traveling, especially at that time, are either, hard workers trying to get to jobs or tourists in the area of Universal Studios. And we want to make sure that the department is doing everything they can to ensure their safety.
Well, so our Transit Services Bureau leadership team is in constant communication with the MTA leadership team as well, and the majority of that conversation is how to increase presence, make sure that we are deployed at the proper hours, and that the ambassadors are also deployed strategically so we have coverage when we need to. And again, this incident is extremely, extremely tragic. And it's not just about the numbers, as we've talked about before. It's about, like you said, it's the feeling of safety. And so being present and visible is important. Officers will take appropriate action when a crime's in progress. I think we all know that. The issue is, can we prevent crime with our presence and through our messaging? And that's the stuff we're working on with MTA.
Thank you, Chief. And I really want to commend the North Hollywood police officers who were on patrol and I believe identified the suspect in almost 30 minutes. So thank you for that great work and for being vigilant. That completes the Chief's report. I'll move on to item number 2, the public comment period. Madam Secretary, will you please call the first speaker?
Yes, the first speaker is Andrew Graebner.
Okay, starting off with the chief's report. The chief's report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If the chief's report exceeds 3 minutes, we should be able to match the amount of time the chief took. Regardless of how long the chief takes, everyone should be able to speak both in person and on the phone. It seemed like there was very limited time dedicated to talking about, like, all the issues in the mission division. Mission division's basically a gang, but very little time dedicated to that. So let's see, we got the consent agenda. Let me pull it up here. Got a lot of really ridiculous donations in there. We've got, let's see, here we've got some related to diversion. We have. Oh, here we go. We have you want to hire Michael Moore as a consultant. He's gone for a reason. He'll claim he's retired to spend time with his family, but he's retired because he's corrupt. He was leading what's still the most murderous police department in the nation. So why are you bringing this guy back? He's gone for a reason, and we don't want him back, even for temporary consulting. So no on that. We have something related to officer mental health. $6 million. Wish we dedicate that much to helping. That much could be dedicated in the budget to help people with citizens who are having mental health crises, get them help that does not involve a cop. We need mental health services, actual mental health professionals, not cops. We have, let's see, we've got donations. We have $20,000 for a virtual reality system for the training bureau. Why do you need that? $20,000 for SWAT equipment, $13,000 for a teenage indoctrination program, also known as Youth Cadet graduation. We've got $11.50 for challenge coins. On that. $3,000 for a 5-night hotel stay for Choi. Really quickly, the meeting last week was an absolute disaster. You're just violating everyone's rights and not letting anyone speak. Where's
Thank you. Your time's up.
Next, we have
speaker.
caller 1264.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay. Officer Choi, the reason that we don't feel safe is because police do not have the authority to do the things that keep us safe. Obviously, this person, he appeared to be homeless in the transit area underneath at the subway. And I'm sure that's not his first time that he's been there. And I don't understand how police aren't able to get information on a lot of these people that are just loitering inside the transit system. We have no intel on who they are or what kind of records they have, and that's the only way that we can tell if they're going to do something. If they've already done it, if they've already had an assault or a stabbing or something like that, then we created a history for this person. But that's not happening. We see police, but they're always hanging around in clutters like they're at a mall. I'm sorry, but I support the police, but you have to be active in what you're doing. I mean, there's some serious criminals out there, and our whole open space is being taken over. Our sidewalks are being taken over. Our streets are being taken over, and we know who these people are, and they don't need tickets to do something more productive. If they haven't started doing something more productive by now, they're not going to. They're going to continue their criminality, and the fact that the police aren't don't seem to be doing anything about it. They just don't seem to, and that's why most people don't feel safe. Like my sidewalks have been taken over by kitchen food encampments, and they take up the sidewalk is only 10 feet. They take up 8. What does that leave us? And these attract national gangs. I'm sorry, but they do. My phone was stolen in that area where we have these people, but nothing is being done. So how can we feel safe when things aren't being done? I just don't understand it, and I'm going to leave it right there for right now. Thank you.
And before we call our next speaker, both Mr. Graebner and Mr. Foster, I will ask you, this is your first warning, to refrain from speaking while other speakers are talking. Mr. Graebner, you've already had your opportunity to talk, and Mr. Foster, if you've signed up, you will talk next. So, Madam Secretary, please call the next speaker.
The next speaker is Perla.
Hello. Just wanted to say if you guys can change like the meeting day to like the weekends or like the evenings or somewhat, because it just isn't fair to like make it around like 9:30 where like right now I'm like missing my classes in the morning just to be here for you guys to speak, like for me to say like anything from like my voice, and I just feels like you guys are limiting like our voice, and it just isn't fair. It just feels like it's like benefiting on your guys' time. And honestly, it just shouldn't be like instead of the LAPD like headquarters, because not a lot of people feel comfortable coming in here. I mean, as like a member from like the Hispanic community, like I feel somewhat kind of scared because like I have been like stopped in the past like for literally doing nothing. And I know you guys talked about the metro and like the stuff that you guys are changing, but honestly, like I want to ask you guys if you guys actually have ridden like the metro or the bus or anything, because I don't see any changes. It's like the same thing. And as a person who always like rides the bus and everything, I don't really see that many officers, and it's honestly like so scary to like be there as like a woman and like someone my size. Is just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like there's no like changes there. And it's just, yeah, like what money are you guys spending on there? What changes are being, like, I don't see anything. And honestly, like, again, on the other topic, that these meetings should be changed, because as you can see, like, not many people from like citizens are like voices are being heard, and it's just, again, benefiting to your guys' time. I mean, like, not a lot of people are here. I mean, I could be doing this online, but again, I would miss some of my classes and everything. I came all the way here from like Pomona as a college student to like be here, and it's kind of crazy. I have to come over here for you guys to hear my voice. Thank you.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, agenda items, public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, first, I totally appreciate Chief Choi's report. I thank you very much. I support agenda items G and H. And I heard from several people since last Tuesday evening that they really appreciated Bobby Arias's report, presentation, including with Pastor Rudy. Apparently they did a really good job, and I was very impressed. Sorry I couldn't make it, but my co-chair was there, so that was good. And I hope everybody stays healthy and safe and respectful. And I'm hoping that still the selection of chief, when it comes down to permanent choice, that it is within the department. We need somebody that has the experience from inside. And with that, I yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker, Jonathan Foster.
Work, really appreciate it. Probably well overdue, but glad that we're leading the charge on this. I just think it's a wonderful opportunity to bring some people onto the department who've lived here essentially for their entire lives and can serve the city and be in public service. So with that, I would move that we approve the department's report.
I second.
Oh, boy, she laughed really good. Crooked, satanic, racist whore Rasha is not the only whore. Yep, all the way to the DNA. Yeah, September 13th and 23, there was a Judge Hainan. The DACA program is illegal. And then you brought it in here. It's already been made illegal. It's illegal. You can't do it. They have to leave the department. And the sheriff department did this before the LAPD. There was a really, really hot blonde, blue-eyed girl, Jewish, really hot. She got shot at the San Francisco Embarcadero. Kate Steinle. Her dad is really sad. Hey, Rasha, you bringing him in here? Hey, Fabian, you got your cam? You bringing him in here? I didn't blink. I didn't blink twice. Karen Bass, she paid with her daughter. Suicide Joe, he paid with his wife, his daughter, and his son. Kathleen Wells talked about how there were 29 black communities in LA. Now there's only 1.5. There was an LA sheriff shot today. And then the reports of people in West Covina, they're saying it's getting worse and worse. And Errol is part of the community safety crap that he isn't producing a fucking goddamn thing. Shut the fuck up and get out of here, Errol. LA, and you're bringing in DACA and police are committing suicide. I didn't blink twice or 3 times or 4 times. 5 times, 6 times, 7. I'm serious. You need to get out of here. You're the problem. You got a climate of political people that surrounds this stuff, and then you have to do something that's disgusting. You don't even care about other women that got raped. And it doesn't matter that the people you brought in didn't do it. Mom and dad, they don't make the decisions around here. Elizabeth Rhodes, is she in Israel? Is that why it was so easy to drive here today? The 3 people that were black and they were pulled over and had their car towed. That's a fucking bunch of goddamn too.
Next, we have Philip Tabby.
And before we move on to Philip, I would just like to apologize to people listening for hearing some sexist comments earlier with that speech. And Mr. Foster, you've already had your first warning, and this is your second warning. Actually, you're done. We only get 1 warning. So, Mr. Foster, you can please leave. Madam Secretary, next speaker, please.
All items, please. I'd like to start with a Bible verse. So we can confidently say, "The Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me?" Hebrews 13:6. You know, the more that I open my eyes, I notice that the LAPD is like a special club. If you don't play by their rules, you will not get very far. You have bullies within your command staff because they think they can get away with anything. Who was the ringleader of it? Michael Moore during his time as chief of police. I can see on today's agenda, item 3C, this commission is voting to approve Moore's contract that appears to began in March, and Moore signed it on April 8th, and this commission is just now approving it. Was Moore working off contract? $240,000 contract for what? It states that Moore needs to turn in logs and invoices. Those should be made public immediately. We all know Moore was fired. This is either his buyout or it's your babysitter, Dom. Which one is it? In Moore's logs, did he advise you about Smith, his former aide of 6 years? The same Smith that called out the body-worn situation at Mission, and now those officers are being indicted. Looking at 10 years, Smith didn't want to be a part of Moore's shenanigans. We can see that what Moore did to Smith was a personal vendetta. I do think Moore's bullying is still happening. He's not the only one. I'm hearing from multiple sources, Deputy Chief Hamilton is lobbying to get his wife a promotion as a Lieutenant 2 with gangs. I heard he called all the Valley Bureau captains. Is this true? That really puts our captains in an unfair position. From what I'm hearing, he even called Deputy Chief Ruby Flores. Did she tell him how inappropriate that sort of request was? As a matter of fact, I'm hearing that this is not the first time Hamilton did such a thing. He did the same thing while his wife was on probation as a lieutenant and she was transferred to traffic to be in the same building as Hamilton. I heard you approved that transfer, Dom. I'm publicly filing a complaint on the matter so an investigation can begin. Every captain, including Deputy Chief Ruby Flores, should be interviewed. Commission, do your job. Ask questions. Dig. You all act like you're players on a football team while the star quarterback bullies others. You just want to be part of the in crowd, so you don't say anything. I see the social media posts with y'all breaking bread with these command staff members. Don't forget, you represent the people. Act like it. I speak from experience. You removed me for speaking truth to power after I gave 30 years as a volunteer at Foothill. But guess what? I'll never go away. This corruption needs to go away. God bless the LAPD.
The next speaker is Megan.
I guess it's no surprise Errol isn't here. The last time we saw him, he was throwing a hissy fit at the so-called community meeting in the Valley. A speaker brought up his decision to, his involvement in the decision to censor the valedictorian speech of a Muslim woman at USC. Errol told the speaker that he was off topic and refused to let him keep speaking. It was super meta to witness Errol suppress the free speech of a black man who brought up Errol's suppression of the free speech of a Muslim woman. As long as you sit on this commission, your decision in all spheres are very on topic, and if you don't like it, you are welcome to quit. Every speaker escorted out of your meeting last week was black. Even though there were white women behaving similarly during public comment, the white ladies were allowed to talk about whatever they wanted. Great headline from last week. LAPD officer from scandal-plagued gang unit is charged with thefts of brass knuckles and knives. What is there to say? Something like this comes out every week. Officer Alan Carrillo is not an exception, but representative of the finest police department in the nation. Dominic said in an interview, this type of behavior is where the public complains about and we lose public trust. But I think it's pretty clear the public trust has been lost for a long time, which is why you have to stack the community commission meetings with your supporters. My heart is with the family of Valentina Orellana Peralta, who learned this week that Officer William Jones would not be charged in the death of their daughter. Jones, who pushed his way to the front of a crowd of police officers, so eager was he to get a shot off on a mentally ill man who was already known to not be armed with a gun, and fired 3 bullets, one of which killed Valentina. Even disgraced former Chief Moore thought that the shots were out of policy. But this commission, in a rare and disgusting split with the chief, thought that only the second and third shots were unreasonable. Dominic, in response to commission questions today, you were missing a lot of facts and information. I'm wondering if that's why we need disgraced former Chief Moore to babysit you for 4 months at the reasonable price of $20,000 a month.
Next, we have Steve Riley.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
First, I'd like to ask what happened to last week's meeting? It was not live streamed. It has not been posted on YouTube in a timely manner or at all. So the public that could not attend the meeting in person have no idea of what happened at that meeting. That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. That meeting should be posted, just like the one that took place in South LA was posted, so the public can actually see our police chief and police commission and public interacting. Look at that room where you are right now. There's almost nobody there. Why? Because people can't make it to police headquarters on a Tuesday morning at 9:30. When you do have the meetings out in the community, which I commend, you are now not allowing people who can't be there to see the meetings, and that needs to be rectified. Los Angeles is supposed to be a world-class city with a world-class police department. You should be able to live stream a meeting. Now, on today's meeting, the chief's report, he left out the murder of a woman on the subway at 5 a.m. Regardless of who the person is, I offered prayers for her soul and to the family and her friends. This is outrageous that it wasn't mentioned in the chief's report. Is that not a major significant incident? It is. I can't believe it. And then the mayor's residence was intruded upon for a second time, and that incident is not mentioned. How can people feel safe in this city? You're not going to be able to cover it up or to dampen the news. You have to deal with it. Okay, so I don't know if you actually ride the subways or the buses, police commissioners, but get out there and see what's going on. Take a ride on, I call it the Red Line, from Union Station, just on a Sunday night at 9 p.m. Go out there and see for yourself what is going on. It's unsafe and it's unacceptable. Things are out of control. You need to have a proactive police department. And then when they make arrests, because there are a lot of good officers, and I support the LAPD, they need to be prosecuted. There need to be consequences for crime. Moving quickly, I support the grant award for the mental health and officer wellness program. That's a great move in the right direction. As far as Chief Moore is concerned, that is a terrible move. That is the ghost of LAPD past fail. And the people who are in the jobs, if they can't do the jobs, find people who can. Things really need to change in LA City and LAPD. Do the job that needs to be done. Empower the police officers. Communication is awful. When you do call a police station front desk, they don't answer the phone. Okay, that's unacceptable also. Work on communication and empower the police officers.
The next speaker, Jay Richardson.
I don't know if you heard it or not, but America today is 80% Russian, 20% American. That means 2 Americans for 3 Russians. The other, the real 2 Americans for 3 Russians, and the rest of the Russians are AIs. We're talking about 2 human beings that are American, 3 human beings that are Russian, and 5 beings that are artificial intelligence, AI. The composition is probably different from what you think. There are Black Russians, there are Mexican Russians, there are Korean Russians, there are Japanese Russians, there are Chinese Russians, there are Philippine, there are African, maybe some from Norway. These 80% constitute Russians that are 80% of the United States, and we're 20% American compared to 80% Russian. I hope these numbers are correct. That's about all right for right now.
The next speaker is Matios Kidan.
My name is Matios Kidana with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. We've sent a letter regarding this commission's practice of censoring speakers. I was censored last week when bringing up Asna Tabasom, the USC valedictorian. And I invite you to read that letter. I'll speak more to it when Southers is present. But I do want to uplift that despite this very weak attempt at suppression by Southers and the USC administration, it has catalyzed kind of an upswell in pro-Palestinian protest across campuses. And so I just want to reaffirm that dissent and resistance are inevitable and often grow despite oppression like this. I also just want to shout out the young person who was up here earlier, kind of uplifting the bullshit that is, this meeting being held at 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. That is an incredibly inaccessible time. And this is an incredibly inaccessible venue. I think we're actually outnumbered by police officers here. And this is meant to be the public forum on police affairs. And we're outgunned, literally, right? And so in thinking about Black and brown folks who have horrible experiences with policing, because again, this is a racist entity that enacts racialized violence, maybe we should take that into consideration when we ask the question of why is this room empty? Next up, I want to talk about the CIPRA audits that are on the agenda today. The California Public Records Act was passed in 1968 under Governor Reagan. It's meant to be a tool of transparency to give people access to public records. That's not been the case for a lot of Angelenos. We conduct our community research primarily through submitting California Public Records requests, and we don't get them, on time. We often don't get them at all. We've waited a year, sometimes more, to get these records from the LAPD. And so any notion that you're conducting an audit to make sure this system is running efficiently is a sham. But it also speaks to kind of the performative nature of transparency, right? We have to claw and fight to get these records. We've sued the city multiple times to get records. And yet, the LAPD, the city attorneys, still run with this narrative that officers are somehow endangered, officers are somehow at risk because of records being shared, private information being shared. That's never been the case. And in fact, it's impossible to get these records. The LAPD has been taking down rosters from Next Request, has been taking down public records that had been made available. And so just kind of pointing out that sham, this audit is kind of ridiculous. And then next up, I want to talk about the death of Valentina Oriana Peralta and the Department of Justice decision on Officer William Jones. Officer Jones was emblematic of progressive policing. This was a community policing officer, and yet he still expressed bloodlust. And I just want to say that kind of highlights what is emblematic to policing, right? So the DOJ decision to offer more training.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next speaker, Hamed Khan.
So one of the items, as Matthew spoke about, was on the California Public Records Act, and it's pathetic that the way they do these inspections and audits, that 97% compliance, 100% compliance. I mean, number one, go back and look at the letters and what we have written about their complete fuckery about this operation. They have shredded documents, meaning they have taken down these documents from the website, the Next Request website. We have to, again, write a letter and stay vigilant because they can continue to do that. And then, this common claim, and this is where it gets, and you're a lawyer, Raja Shields, that we get this response from the Public Records Division, the discovery section, that unusual circumstances exist because these documents are at another division. Well, no shit, they're in another division. I mean, that's why you have the discovery section and the public records where we gather all this information. That is your job, to go gather this information. There is no unusual circumstance. What is so extremely burdensome about that, right? Because that's what you have to do. Go there and get all this information. We haven't received records for the public records that we filed in 2021. In 2022, we have taken the city to court 11 times, and we have already won 10 public records lawsuits against the city. But it's just like because they have a bottomless pit of money, so that's what they try to do. That they want to exhaust you and exhaust you and exhaust you because they have money to throw. And that's why, this $4 billion organization can't even get its shit together to get this information over to people. And then, just other piece about this, since we released the website, the watchthewatchers.net, about not releasing rosters, we filed public records to get photos of all the recruits. Well, once the recruits graduate, those pictures are posted all over the world. Officially, they are posted on LAPD's website. Officially, everybody's out there shaking hands. But no, you can't get them because those are for a different public, but they're not for this public, whereas they are supposed to be public records of employees of a public institution. And the second thing I want to talk about is the letter that we sent from our lawyer, Shakir Rahman, to the commission. And we're having trouble, Django, since you are now the ED, we continue to have trouble that somehow the Stop LAPD Spying at Gmail, our email has been blocked. So we have to call your office to get this information over. I know TFAC was nice enough to get it over to the institution. But the question is that why is Souther's close relationship with the Zionist apartheid state of Israel off topic? Why is it that? Because he boasts of all of those qualifications. When Fabian joined the commission, it was his qualifications outside of with Homeboys Industries that was taken into consideration. Souther's qualifications of having this relationship, worked in this center, and really kind of just created this pathway for countering violent extremism, which
Thank you. Next
The
speaker.
next speaker is Jason Reedy, please.
Who's the next speaker?
Jason Reedy.
Okay, so I want to talk about last week. This commission decided to hold its community meeting at Bisham Alamy, a private Catholic school with a decades-long history of molestation. I'm supposed to believe that the commission didn't know about William Ick, who worked at Bisham Alamy from 2009 to 2016, and was arrested for having sex with at least 2 students. What about Jamie Quaglino, Bishop Alamy's volleyball coach, who was named in a lawsuit for sexually molesting a male student in 2018? The same Jamie Quaglino who was implicated in an off-campus, quote-unquote, hazing incident in 2008 involving a sex toy and assault of a minor. The same Jamie Quaglino who Bishop Alamy never fired as a result of that, which opened the door to him preying on even more children. What about Michael Nosita, who was principal of Bishop Alamy in 1988, who was accused of abusing 4 girls during his tenure at high schools, including Bishop Alamy? Now, I know these abuses don't add up to what Errol Southers' founded PAL program in Santa Monica did, but there's undoubtedly a correlation between how Bishop Alamy, Errol Southers, and the LAPD see the sexual abuse of the most vulnerable people in our society, our youth, and it's that they simply don't care about it. Now, we know that 3 commissioners live in the Valley, and I find it hard to believe that none of you knew about Bishop Alamy. I mean, Fabian, that's your council district. Lou, you claim to be a lifelong advocate for children, for the children of Los Angeles, and that you allowed a city meeting to happen at Bishop Alamy. If you even look at how the LAPD claims it wants to further enhance the relationship between the LAPD and the LGBTQ community, Bishop Alamy says that gay people are called to chastity, dancing between boys, females, and males is the only thing that's allowed, and that they only support boy-girl relationships in their parent-student handbook. The decision to hold the meeting in Mission Division, given all the controversy with its gang enforcement detail, was interesting because none of your top brass discussed this during the meeting. In fact, we had to hear about the scandal from William Good, a member of the public that you purportedly represent. Now, I heard Troy even talk about how, before he became chief, about how the LAPD has a tendency for its officers to escalate situations, and we saw that on full display at last week's meeting. You had your pigs telling us that we'd be arrested for trespassing immediately if we did not leave the grounds after being kicked out of your delicate meeting. And when challenged on who made that determination, Moffitt lied and said campus security, even though they hadn't. In fact, we have some lawyers in the room, and I want to reference 4124, the section that relates to trespassing. It says this advisement must be made by the owner, the owner's agent, the person in lawful possession, or a peace officer at the request of the owner, owner's agent, or a person in lawful possession, none of which Scott Moffitt had. And within seconds of asking him to de-escalate the situation with Matios, said that I would be arrested for asking what harm was being caused by a black man standing in a parking lot. So again, you never claim anyone's public comment is off topic if they say we stand with Israel, if they say we're tired of illegals taking over this country. They can say all sorts of slurs, and it's all good. But anything on Errol's heinous past, and it's bye-bye for the speaker.
Okay. We have a card that says no name.
Yes, no name. Nobody has a name. So, what did we have 2 Fridays ago?
I was grabbed and assaulted by a sergeant at arms over at the other building at the regular council meeting. I got a bad ankle. They said I didn't move fast enough. So I get up to speak like this. Chair says, I didn't call you. I'm closing public comment. I says, I got the floor. Sergeant, show him out. Grabs me in my right arm, twists it, shoves me. The following week, we got Stacy Segarra Bollinger. 5'2", 110 pounds. Some of you have taken shits bigger than that, right? It's a little tiny thing. So she gets up on the stage. Two of the sergeants go over, grab her, pull her, drag her 100 feet around the council chambers, down the hallway, all the way to the south lawn, and back behind the council chambers, and holds her for 10 hours. What the fuck is that? That's a hostage. You took a hostage. That's what you did. That's a hostage. That's not law enforcement. It's a fucking hostage. I saw Curran Price get booked on 10 felonies by your department. He was invited to go at his earliest convenience and be booked and released and fingerprinted at any police station. He chose Van Nuys at his own convenience and got chauffeured at taxpayer expense. But she gets 10 hours of detention. And it took 8 hours until I finally walked over to Metro Station myself and got out of my car, and they saw me waving, and I get back to my car, and they says, oh, look, there's an update. She's in the Sheriff's Department database, where you put her date of birth, you put her race, you put her full name, you put all her personal information so she can be attacked as a young woman, and that's on your fucking hands. Any of you here, she ever gets assaulted, raped, robbed, it's because you did that. And that's exactly why you do that. Because you're interested in suppressing opposition speech to your junta, to your gang members here. And you got the puppet police chief. Now you're gonna go get another police chief, right? And I told you the week before. So what do? I start digging into this sergeant at arms thing. What the fuck is it? How come they're all driving $125,000 cars out of the garage that the council members use? This sergeant at arms thing's a good gig, isn't it? Are you giving them a special car allowance, right? Sergeant at arms got to go. Put their asses back out on duty in the streets and let them do some real cop work. You know, like that thing over at the Metro Station needed to report, the old stabbing to the neck thing.
The next speaker, Adam Smith.
Good morning. Wow. Nothing, Becky. My name's Adam Smith from the Los Angeles Community Action Network. Looking through the so-called use of force report on my phone this morning, the first thing I'm thinking about was years ago, the executive director would at least print copies for the public to read and take with us. Not the most damning thing about the department, of course, but just speaks to the accessibility of this place that has been lifted up multiple times today. Some lowlights from the so-called use of force report are that according to LAPD's own data, nearly 25% of all use of force incidents involve people identified as houseless. So in a city, in a society that prioritizes housing and private property as a way to build and protect wealth, it's no surprise, though it's fucking disgusting, that the use of legal state violence in this city is disproportionately used against 1% of the population. That happens to also be poor, houseless, private propertyless, and disproportionately black. The report also shows that the bullets used per LAPD shooting went up to nearly 10 shots per shooting from 7 last year. And with the report also showing that nearly 2/3 of all LAPD uses of force are the result of calls to service. Every year this report comes out and it begs the question, if LAPD's own data continues to show that legal, approved by the police commission, legal, like what you call progressive, community-oriented, community policing, if your own data continues to show that what you call outreach, what you call engagement with the persons experiencing homelessness result in disproportionate amounts of violence, where you call them suspects, where you pathologize people for being poor, for being houseless, for being black. And your own data shows that it's through violence. It's disgusting. And this is what you all sign up for, to come to work every year. So Mr. Sibley, can you print out some of these fucking reports? Yeah, there's a lot to say about the Errol Southers anti-blackness. And I know Jason lifted it up, but yeah, thinking about all of the ways that his quote unquote work outside of this commission is very much involved in how he comes here. I'm thinking about the over 200 kids in Santa Monica that were targeted with sexual abuse from the program that he was proud to start. Good work.
The next speaker, Daniel Charlton.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I'd like to speak to a lot of people lifting up that it's at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday and that's very difficult to get to. I'd like to observe that is most likely intentional, as public comment is mostly something that the commission white knuckles through. It is intentionally designed to be as obfuscated as difficult to see and as difficult to participate in as possible. I'd also like to note that public comment, even very well done, is not a democracy. It is not substitute for democratic oversight, nor is one or two elected representatives within an obviously corrupt system, as everyone here has spoken to. I'd also like to speak to, I heard a lot of anxiety and fear around homelessness and the homeless, and I'd like to point out that the solution to homelessness is really pretty simple. It's homes, it's housing. It's actually, and in fact, it's actually cheaper to simply house people and give them the keys than it is to police them. But we are in the LAPD Police Commission, and one of the LAPD's fundamental functions, if not maybe its fundamental function, is to increase its own budget. A solution to the housing problem does not mean more budget for the police. Policing and criminalizing homelessness is profitable because they can continue to police and criminalize homeless and the rest of us, and then when they fail to solve the problem, they can say the problem is that we need more money, and then they can get more money. It's just really obvious stuff, guys. House keys, not handcuffs. All right, bye-bye.
And that's the last speaker, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. That completes item 2 on the agenda, public comment period. Moving on to item number 3 on the agenda. Do any of the commissioners have any questions about items 3A through 3I? Okay, no questions being asked. I move that we approve the recommendations listed in the report for items 3A and 3I in the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, moving on to item number 4, regular agenda items 4A. Mr. Smith, you're disrupting the meeting now. Please leave. Mr. Smith. Mr. Reedy, thank you. Item number 4A. And this is the department's report on the 2023 use of force year-end review.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you introduce yourself and provide us a little overview of the report, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, and today I'll be presenting a snapshot of the Los Angeles Police Department's 2023 Use of Force Year-End Review. I'm going to discuss use of force related policy updates from 2023 and this past year's ongoing training and our collective efforts of achieving excellence through the continued refinement of our policies and practices. However, before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to publicly recognize the men and women of Critical Incident Review Division who worked hard to design and produce this publication.
Matt, can you just introduce yourself first so we know who you're talking to?
Oh, I'm the commanding officer of Critical Incident Review Division. Thank you. Matt Pluggy.
Thank you.
With that, thank you, Chief. Our CIRD staff has compiled the most comprehensive and transparent view of the police use of force in the nation. The unit is comprised of civilian professionals and sworn supervisors and officers with diverse work experience and unique skills that are brought together to produce this report. I could not be prouder of them, and at this time, I would like to begin this presentation. In this presentation, I'll explain how the public can access this report, provide a brief overview of city crime and use of force data, brief overviews of categorical use of force incidents and non-categorical use of force incidents. I'll provide a short synopsis of significant policy changes that were instituted in 2023 and some of the department's ongoing training efforts relative to use of force. Upon being adopted by this commission, the department's use of force year-end review will be available at the link that you see on the PowerPoint presentation at www.lapdonline.org. Excuse me. The report can be found under the Police Commission's quick link at the bottom of the page in the section labeled Annual Use of Force Year-End Report. The link for the 2023 report will be listed at the top. It should also be noted that the website also contains historical and abridged summaries of categorical use of force incidents and their related findings. To put the Los Angeles Police Department's use of force in context, it's important to look at the total stop and arrest data. In 2023, Los Angeles Police Department officers engaged in 1,137,207 documented public contacts. Of the total contacts in 2023, 350,118, or about 31%, were officer-initiated contacts. 42,373 of those public contacts, or approximately just 3.7% of all public contacts in 2023, resulted in arrests. 1,630 of all public contacts, or approximately 0.14%, resulted in any type of reportable use of force. Also in 2023, 34 of all public contacts resulted in an officer-involved shooting. That represents just 0.0029% of all public contacts. As you can see, the vast majority of public contacts, even those initiated by our officers, result in no force being used. In addition to the stop data, the use of force picture also needs to be put into perspective by viewing it in the context of the crime picture of the city. So in 2023, we saw the continued efforts at gun recoveries by our officers. 8,154 guns were recovered in 2023. This was a 3% decrease compared to 2022. But as you can see, a 25% increase compared to 2020, and the third highest annual gun recovery year in the last decade. About 15% of the guns recovered in 2023 were personally manufactured firearms, commonly referred to as ghost guns. Now, while slightly lower in 2022, personally manufactured firearm recoveries in 2023 were more than double that of 2020. Violent crime incidents decreased over 3% in 2023 as compared to 2022. And when compared to 2022, 2023 saw a yearly 5% reduction in robberies, a 16% reduction in homicides, 14% reduction in rapes, and aggravated assaults were down by 1%. And now I will get into the use of force picture for 2023. First, I'd like to provide information related to categorical uses of force.
information, and then I'll move into the non-categorical use of force. But first, I'd like to briefly explain what a categorical use of force is. The department defines a categorical use of force in part as any officer-involved shooting, including animal shootings and unintentional discharge of a firearm in either a tactical or a non-tactical situation, the firing of warning shots, an in-custody death, any intentional head strike with a baton or other impact device, the use of a carotid restraint, control, hold, or chokehold, or the use of any other force deemed to be deadly force. Categorical use of force incidents also include any force that results in the subject's hospitalization, commonly referred to as a law enforcement-related injury or LERI, a canine contact that results in hospitalization, or any use of force that the chief of police directs to be investigated by Force Investigation Division. In 2023, there were 70 categorical uses of force. That represents a 25% increase compared to 2022. The most significant increases in categorical use of forces were found in the area of in-custody deaths, which increased by 4 incidents compared to 2022, and canine contacts resulting in hospitalizations, which increased from 1 in 2022 to 6 in 2023. As it relates to canine contacts, the department has been working on a revision to the canine deployment manual, and it has taken an in-depth look at canine handler and dog obedience training. One item to note in our examination in the area of categoricals related to canine contacts is that there were no single canines or handlers who were involved in a repeat categorical incident in 2023. And this slide just represents a historical perspective of officer-involved shootings. Of note, the period between 2018 and 2023 has been the lowest 5-year period of officer-involved shooting incidents in the last 3+ decades. Nonetheless, we're committed to further reducing OIS incidents through our continued emphasis on training and de-escalation. In 2023, 85% of officer-involved shootings involved 1 or 2 shooters, while the total number of rounds fired by officers increased this year, as you can see, to 327 from 215. 2 incidents accounted for over 150 of those rounds. One of those incidents resulted in 3 police officers being shot by the suspect. 66 officers were involved in a total of 34 OIS incidents, resulting in an average of 1.9 officers per incident, so just under 2 officers involved per incident. And with the next following slides, I'll be brief with some of the statistics here, as I've already touched on some of the key points. But I'd like to highlight some of this important data. It is notable that of the 34 officer-involved shootings last year, 24 were sourced from radio calls or citizen flag downs. Only 7 incidents occurred from an officer-initiated activity. From a percentage standpoint, these numbers are consistent with the 5-year average. As we compare 2023 to 2022, we had a 30% decrease in officer-involved shooting incidents with suspects armed with guns, but an overall 240% increase in OIS incidents involving suspects armed with edge weapons. Officer-involved shooting incidents involving suspects perceived by the officers to be armed with a firearm decreased from 5 in 2022 to 1 in 2023. % of the suspects involved in OIS incidents were between the ages of 30 and 39 years old. This age group has consistently represented the largest number of suspects involved in officer-involved shootings. We saw a decrease of suspects in the age range of 18 to 23 years old and an increase in the suspects in the 40 to 49 year age range. Officer-involved shootings involving suspects experiencing homelessness increased 38% in 2023 compared to 2022 and accounted for 38% of the OIS suspects involved in the incidents. The percentage of suspects injured as a result of OIS incidents in 2023 was in line with the average from previous 4 years. That is 41% in 2022 compared to the prior 4-year average of 40%. The number of fatal OIS incidents in 2023 was higher than 2022 and above the previous 4-year average. That percentage is somewhat skewed, however, by the 7 fatal OI incidents in 2020, which was the lowest number of fatalities in at least 10 years. And I'll now transition to the non-categorical use of force data. In 2023, there were 1,560 reportable non-categorical use of force incidents. That was a decrease of 653 incidents, or nearly 30% compared to 2022. However, it should be noted that the 2023 comparison to the 2022 numbers are not an apples-to-apples comparison, as the use of force policy changed, and it is change that I will be addressing later in the presentation. The total number of non-lethal force applications, not incidents, but applications of force within an incident decreased by 30%. Incidents in which our officers used less lethal force options remained similar to 2022. The numbers do speak to the effectiveness of the department's commitment to de-escalation training and the restraint our officers have shown in instances when force was deemed necessary. You can see in the breakdown of non-categorical use of force options, the force option used in the vast majority of reportable use of force incidents are low-level, non-lethal force applications such as body weight, firm grips, and joint locks. 34% of our non-categorical use of force incidents involved the suspect impaired by alcohol and/or drugs, and 33% of the non-categorical use of force incidents involved the subject experiencing homelessness. This just shows a 5-year comparison of the non-categorical use of force incidents involving homelessness. In 2023 continues a trend of 3 consecutive years of reductions in these types of incidents with people experiencing homelessness. As you can see, the 5-year numbers are trending downward. And now I'd like to briefly just discuss a couple of the significant use of force policy changes from 2023. The Office of Chief of Police Special Order Number 6 changed our use of force reporting policy and established 3 levels for review for reportable non-categorical uses of force. Special Order 6 implemented these 3 levels, and level 3 use of force is defined generally as minor applications of non-lethal techniques such as pushing, pulling, body weight, etc., that result in an injury or complaint of injury as reportable and reviewed at level 3. Level 3 use of forces, which is a major change for our department, also include the use of intermediate force options such as those that discharge a projectile, for example, a beanbag shotgun or a 40 millimeter less lethal launcher, that do not make contact with the subject. When an intermediate force option projectile device is used and it does not make contact prior to this change in policy, it was not reported as a use of force. However, now we've changed that policy and it is now reported as a use of force. In addition, any use of force during a crowd control situation that does not go beyond the scope of the mission of the skirmish line is reportable as a level 3. This too includes more instances into our use of force system than previous years. Level 3 uses of force require determination of whether the force applied is within department policy, but it does not formally address tactics. If it is determined that a level 3 use of force does not meet our policy standards, it will be elevated and treated as a level 1 use of force. Our level 2 uses of force include intermediate force options, canine contacts that do not result in hospitalization, and any strike or takedown. And finally, our level 1 incidents include any force where there are inconsistencies discovered in the account of the incident, or where injuries are not consistent with the force reported, or where a use of force results in a serious bodily injury that does not require hospitalization. In the department's further efforts to enhance de-escalation efforts, the Department Manual Volume 1, Section 573 was revised. This revision provided for officers to utilize intermediate force options, not only where there is an immediate threat of safety to officers or others, but also in situations where a threat, if not immediately addressed, could escalate to the use of deadly force. And finally, 2023 has seen the continued use of our department's training division to continue our de-escalation and use of force efforts, or use of force training. These courses include the mental health intervention training, which is ongoing. It includes the continuation of the critical thinking force options course. Critical thinking force options course is a scenario-based training in which officers use strategic communication and de-escalation techniques to resolve incidents involving armed suspects. Law enforcement tactical application course continues. It's a combination of classroom, scenario, and situation-based training that focuses on enhancing tactical skills and de-escalation efforts. The de-escalation lab continues. It is a grant-funded training course that combines classroom training with scenario-based exercises focusing on de-escalation techniques and strategies. Virtual reality training allows for live role players to interact with computer-controlled characters in real-life scenarios. The focus of the training is on de-escalation and the use of non-lethal and less lethal force options to mitigate the need to use lethal force. Another use of force training is our de-escalation course designed by SWAT. It is the Crisis Negotiator course for frontline officers, which is a program that was designed by Metropolitan Division SWAT for our initial responding officers to deal with crisis intervention. And finally, we are continuing the active bystandership training. It's facilitated in collaboration with the Georgetown University. It aims to give our officers the tools they need to recognize troubling behavior in their fellow officers, take proactive steps to address this behavior. The training serves two important purposes. One, it strengthens public trust by reinforcing officers' duty to intercede, which is now part of the department's use of force policy and a legal requirement. And second, it reiterates the department's strategic goal of employee wellness to make each employee a steward of that goal. And that concludes the introduction of last year's 2023 use of force report.
Thank you, Captain, and thank you for that presentation. I'd ask that we receive copies of both the PowerPoint and that the PowerPoint also get uploaded with the agenda. I will, provide an opportunity for commissioners to ask questions now, but I will tell you that the report is so comprehensive and thorough that I personally would like another week to review it. So I would propose having it on the agenda next week. And, potentially also inviting with you someone from the Training Bureau who could potentially answer any additional questions that we may have. So before I move, we move it, does any commissioner have any questions now, or would you like to hold off? Okay, Commissioner Briggs, please.
And thank you, Vice President Shields, for requesting another review of this, particularly with someone from training, because my question does go to training. Two topics that are very close to me. Number one, the issue of OISs that are involved when someone has an edged weapon is still troubling to me. So I think we should have someone, unless you're prepared to do so today, from the training department, talk about efforts that the department is making to not only de-escalate situations where they see someone with an edged weapon, but what other type of tools can be used when someone has an edged weapon other than an officer using his firearm. We see far too many of those that come across our desk when we're asked to rule upon them. And so, if you're prepared to address that, I would appreciate that. But if not, I certainly would hope that someone from the training department could address it next week when we invite you back here. But if you want to address it now.
Well,
Probably not to the extent that training could, but when officers are dealing with subjects that are wielding edged weapons, in order to prevent that officer-involved shooting, as you know, because you see these cases, it brings together multiple different factors, as you've already identified, which would be not only the tactics that the officers use, which would include their efforts to maintain distance, to have cover, put an object between a person armed with an edged weapon, but also the tools that the department has available to de-escalate that situation. Not so perhaps that force isn't used, but as you've identified, so that deadly force isn't used. One of the major enhancements to our policy that I think will help address that going forward is the change in the manual as it relates to the officer's ability to use the intermediate force options, not just when they face an immediate threat or to themselves or others, but also when they can reasonably articulate the potential that if they do not resolve the situation with intermediate force option, that it could devolve to the use of deadly force. And that was a pretty significant policy change that hopefully will go to addressing that concern. But a more comprehensive answer, if you're looking for it, as to what tools are on the horizon or that we have or use or how they're trained, or the actual nuts and bolts of things like the critical thinking force options training. I personally have gone through that training, which is designed specifically to address the concern that you have. The scenarios that are presented to the officers are scenarios where the officers are confronted with situations where suspects are armed with weapons other than firearms, and the expectation and the training really is that they're reinforcing those characteristics of the tactics, like I discussed, the distance and cover and time, and officers working together as a team, not just tactically, but also how they communicate with folks that are experiencing whatever they're experiencing in these incidents, and then also practicing with the tools. So a more comprehensive answer will probably come from Training Bureau, but I think from the CRD standpoint, and we have just one small picture of this, I think a major step forward was that policy change as it relates to our intermediate force options.
Thank you. The second part of my question is the active bystander training. Where are we in terms of that cycle? I know that all the command staff has been through it. Where are we in terms of the rest of the department and personnel going through the training?
So as I think you're aware, yes, all the command staff has gone through it, or we're supposed to have all gone through it. As far as the actual numbers, it is a mandatory training course for all of our department employees, I believe sworn and civilian alike. As far as the actual numbers or what percentage of employees are pushed through, that's a Training Bureau question that I'm not prepared to answer that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the other commissioners want to preview their questions? Commissioner Kalanche?
I don't, but I do agree that need more time, and also would love to have the PowerPoint. It was kind of hard to see on both ends. So I would love to have the PowerPoint. Do you need a motion for us to, yeah?
I was just going to see if Commissioner Garcia had any additional comments.
Just a quick question. Regarding the calls for service, so there was a decrease in calls for service. Does that account for the non-emergency calls, or is that only to 911?
I would have to get the specifics on that, but I believe it includes all non-emergency and emergency calls for service.
It does. It includes all calls for service into communications.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, and after consulting with Mr. Sibley, I would move that we move this report for 2 weeks from now and put it on the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. And thank you again, Captain, for a really great presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item number 4B on the agenda, the department's report relative to the California Public Records Act inspection. Please introduce yourselves and who else is at the table, and provide us a little overview. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone.
I'm Sharon Sargent, Commanding Officer of Audit Division. I have with me Police Performance Auditor Sophia Liu, and also from Risk Management Legal Affairs Division, Captain Jelani, and also Lieutenant Kwan. And today I'm going to share a brief overview of the California Public Records Act inspection that was conducted by Audit Division as part of our 2023 annual audit plan. As you may recall, this inspection is part of a settlement agreement that was signed in 2019 between the City of LA and the ACLU of Southern California. The agreement requires a 5-year inspection of SEPRA compliance, and the department established an audit plan that runs from 2020 through 2024, and this marks the department's 4th consecutive year. Risk Management Legal Affairs Division is the entity that is responsible for SEPRA requests, and for this inspection, auditors examined the handling of 95 different requests from July of 2022 through June of 2023. This included assessing the timely notifications to the requester, justified extensions, whether unfulfilled requests were permitted under SEPRA rules, and if a reasonable effort was made to locate records. The report shows that the department has demonstrated continued improvement from prior years. All the areas received full compliance except for 2. One area received a 99% compliance, and that was one request that was closed on the 19th day without justification. The department should have closed that within 10 days or notified the requester of the need for an extension. The other area received 91% compliance, and that involved justification of 14-day extensions. In 2 instances, an older government code section was used instead of the current one. They had used the prior year's government code section, which had changed. Audit Division met with Risk Management Legal Affairs Division, who addressed these issues through training, and they are in general agreement with the audit's findings. The City Attorney's Office also reviewed this inspection to ensure that it satisfied the settlement agreement. And we are happy to answer questions if there are any.
I'll start with Commissioner Garcia. Do you have any questions?
No question. Thank you.
Commissioner Briggs? No. Commissioner Calanche? Okay, I have a few questions, just so that I kind of better understand. The audit was looking at kind of the department's response, kind of initial responses to the applicants, correct? So it's not identifying how long it took to actually provide the records or whether the individuals were satisfied with the records that were provided. Is that fair?
Yes.
Do we have, and so it looks like there has to be, within 10 days an initial response. And then for an extension, you get 14-day extension. Did you look at any future extensions to see whether that also kind of complied with the requirements?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did. We did look at each one.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Hi, Commissioner Sophia Liu, Audit Division. We did look at the 95 sampled items, each one of them in addition to the initial notification to the requester for the 10 days and additional 14 days with justification during unusual circumstances, and also the further extensions that SEPRA unit implemented to ensure the public requester is kept informed of the status of the actual production of the record.
You mentioned the kind of unusual circumstances. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of are some of the requests I've heard can be very, very broad or take, have multiple numbers or questions within one request? Is that part of the analysis that goes into unusual?
Yeah, that is correct. Just to give you some perspective, among the 95 requests, 89% of the requesters either received the requested records or received a final decision explaining the reason why the records could not be produced, are all within 24 days. For the remaining 11% of requests, that one beyond the 24-day time frame, they did receive multiple further notices sent by CPRA unit on a consistent basis.
And maybe this isn't directed, you might not be the best person to direct the question to, but do you know what avenues there are for individuals who are not satisfied with the CPRA process? Like what steps do they take to alert the department of that?
I'm Captain Galani, I think I can address that. So if they don't get the responsive records they want, they can respond back to the CPRA unit. There's a lot of times there are exchanges where they may request certain information and there'll be a back and forth. It's all documented on the CPRA portal. Ultimately, if they are denied records for whatever reasons, if we assert an exemption, you can always file a writ. So that is an avenue for relief that they also have.
Thank you. And Chief, this may be to you. I would ask for kind of an executive committee summary of any kind of pending writs that relate to CPRA requests. And it's also my understanding that another avenue that some individuals use to complain about this are personnel complaints against individuals in the CPRA unit. And to me, if my understanding is that they are working hand in hand with the city attorney's office, that seems a little almost unfair to those individuals. If there's another mechanism that can be done to complain about the department's CPRA process, it may be more appropriate for us to look into, or I don't know if you have that information on hand or can get back to us on
I
that.
can give you some comments. So we can absolutely get you the pending CPRA requests, see kind of if there's a backlog or what there, and allow the executive committee to look at that. But as far as public complaints, they are as such. We will take those as complaints. However, there is a disposition mechanism if we believe, the department believes that these are proper and in the scope and course of their daily duties. We can close them out quickly as policy and procedure and move on. So it doesn't require lengthy investigations, things like that. So there is a way to address them in a timely manner.
Thank you, especially if they are working with the city attorney's office and getting guidance from them as to how to respond. I think that's the most equitable way to resolve those. So thank you. Okay, with that, thank you all for the presentation, and I would move that we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in agreement, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 4C on the agenda, the department's report relative to the Ethics Enforcement Section Integrity Test Report. Thank you. Chief Ramkunis, can you introduce yourself and others at the table?
All right, we got this working. Chief Michael Ramkunis, Commanding Officer, Professional Standards Bureau. Today I'm here with Captain Damian Wyma. He's the new Special Operations Division Commanding Officer, along with Detective Brad Michael, who is the officer in charge of the Ethics Enforcement Section out of Special Operations Division. The team will be presenting a quick overview of the 2023 ethics report, the annual report. So I'll turn it over to Captain Wyma. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chief Choi, Mr. Smith, Mr. Sibley. I'm Captain Damian Wyma, the Commanding Officer of Special Operations Division. Here with me today is Detective Brad Michael, the officer in charge of the Ethics Enforcement Section. This morning, we're here to present the Ethics Enforcement Section Annual Report covering 2023. The goal of EES is to safeguard the integrity of operations within the department and enhance our service to the public. To do this, we develop fair integrity tests to evaluate employees for at-risk behavior, serve as a resource for the department to identify and investigate at-risk behavior, and evaluate community encounters for the adherence with department policy
and the application of procedural justice and constitutional policing. To accomplish these goals, we employ a variety of integrity tests to monitor employees. These tests can be done on random employees or on specific employees if there's a reason to believe a particular employee needs to be tested. Productivity in EES remains high, as we're up 6% in overall tests over 2022, with 209 compared to 197 in 2022. But more broadly, EES has continued an overall upward trend since 2019, when these total tests were 131. It's also worth noting that due to some concerns of the department, we shifted the focus of some of our tests in 2023, specifically tests of specialized divisions or specialized assignments are up 1,200%, from 6 in 2022 to 78 in 2023. Of the 209 total integrity tests that were conducted, 7 resulted in failures and another 34 resulted in passes with comments to command. This means that although the result of the intended target was a pass, something was identified that could have been improved. I think these instances are one of the highlights of the work of EES because it gives us an opportunity to communicate weaknesses or deficiencies that we have identified to individual commands, bureaus, and offices to correct, such as AFDRs not being completed and body-worn video not being activated when conducting investigations. We also had 27 inconclusive tests, 10 for integrity tests, and 17 for complaint intake tests. Inconclusive tests are another category that allows us to evaluate and communicate where we might need to make improvements. Inconclusives can occur when there isn't enough information to make a determination or identify a particular employee, or when factors outside the employee's control have an impact on the outcome. The feedback loop with these tests is similar to that of pass with comments. In regards to the complaint intake tests, many of the inconclusives were attributed to what are often quality of service issues, such as phone lines not being answered and voicemails not being returned. In response to this discovery, PSB worked with the Office of Operations to initiate a project to ensure the timely answering of calls and returning voicemails. Anecdotally, there appears to be an improved response to telephone calls and voicemails, and we look forward to having more specific data in next year's report, hopefully reflecting a reduction in inconclusive outcomes. Of the 7 failures, 4 were failures to take personnel complaints when we alleged misconduct, and 3 were integrity test failures. 2 of the integrity test failures were desk officers who failed to take hate incident reports. The 3rd was a failure to activate body-worn video while making contact with the suspect, and the corresponding CAD summary was also inconsistent with the officer's actions. All of these failures resulted in personnel complaint investigations. Additionally, there were 29 integrity test attempts. These occur when there isn't observable activity suitable for evaluation. This can occur for many reasons, such as when the intended target has court, calls in sick, or has other unplanned administrative duties. Of the 29 attempts, 28 were then subsequently retested and closed, and 1 is still pending a retest. Those are just the highlights of this report. Due to the confidential nature of some of these investigations, we are unable to go into the specific detail regarding specific tests and strategies, but we're happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Well, you just foreclosed my question, so.
Commissioner Briggs, do you have any other questions that you can ask?
That was it.
Well, I think we could ask more broadly to the chief about what type, so, and I think that what was mentioned during the presentation is that all of the, potential failures would have resulted in a personnel complaint. Is there anything else that the command staff can learn from or do kind of feedback loop so that our officers are better trained in this regard?
Well, I'll tell you, these failures are clear. I don't believe it's a training issue. I think it's an issue of being diligent and doing your job when you're asked to do it. And that's more of a leadership challenge that our commanding officers, our lieutenants, our supervisors all have to talk to their officers on a daily basis about, even if they feel it's an extra step, they don't take any shortcuts. So I don't believe it's a training issue, it's a messaging issue.
Commissioner Shields, if I can just add to the chief's point, one of the the things that we're proud of is that Special Operations Division, they're undercover, but it's not a surprise to individuals. So it's good that employees know that Special Operations Division is out there conducting tests, whether or not they're coming in person in the station, whether or not they're doing phone calls. So we don't make it a secret that this is occurring, because that's one of the ways that we hold people accountable, that they know that employees are being tested. So one of the things that Captain Wyma does along with the team, but I think more specifically with Captain Wyma, is he connects with the command officers who have these, maybe not failures where they don't reach the level of a personnel complaint, but he does connect with the command and the individuals involved and advises them of these things that are occurring and how to correct them. So I think that's one of the positives. It's not just the discipline piece of the personnel complaint, it's the feedback loop that he provides with the command and the involved employees to provide training, awareness, so it is brought to their attention so we can correct the behavior. But as the chief mentioned, there are very, very small numbers in the sense where we got to issue, discipline, but it's more of a training issue, and that's what we've seen for the 3 years that I've been here of just ongoing things that the folks could do better.
And if I may, as I mentioned, that feedback loop is not only for the failures, but we also take very seriously the pass with comments to command and the inconclusives. And we look at trends and patterns there and provide feedback to commanding officers and bureaus, depending on if the trends we see look like they're local to a division or more broad to the department or a bureau. And we continue that feedback with those commands.
I was actually going to ask about that, the pass with comments. Can you provide us with an example or two of what that type of conduct would have been?
I'll let Detective Michael answer that.
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So with these, whether it's with a field test or a complaint intake test, any of the results, if they're not a straight pass, could result in a pass with comments. Some of the examples could be possibly when we interact with a desk officer and while they're conducting a criminal investigation, it's later found out they didn't activate their body-worn video to capture that investigation. It could be possibly that at the conclusion of a traffic stop out in the field, that unit subsequently did not complete a field data report reflecting what had occurred. Sometimes the field data reports are complete, but we'll notice inconsistencies with maybe what occurred. Maybe there was a search, then that didn't get documented on the AFDR, or some other type of inconsistency that we saw out there that didn't match what they submitted.
Ultimately, the tests that they conduct are very specific. We're testing for a very specific behavior. So as long as the officer passes that behavior, then it's considered a pass. But if there are things that we think could have been done better, and we find minor inconsistencies with policy or things like that that don't necessarily signify a pass, we pass those on to the command so they can make those corrections internally without making it a personnel complaint.
Got it. And Chief, if there are instances of, searches not being documented, I'd hope that would result in further investigation of these individuals.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
There are some things that aren't specific to the test that would be an
So-
automatic failure.
Yeah, so I think a better example would be a UC, a undercover officer goes to the front desk, wants to make a complaint. So a supervisor comes and tells a story. So the supervisor documents the complaint. Let's say it's a bias policing complaint. They take a bias policing complaint, ask all the answers. But during that discussion, the UC officer discloses an allegation of discourtesy. And that sergeant misses that allegation, right? Although it's recorded and everything, but in that case, it's still a pass because the test is, do you initiate a personnel complaint? And then the comment would be, hey, you missed this comment. That's a better example than I think what we.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Garcia, do you have any questions?
Can you all explain Table 3 a little bit more in depth?
So this is the number of completed evaluations by misconduct category. So there are several
a certain test may cover multiple misconduct categories. That's why the numbers don't necessarily correspond to the number of tests that we did. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, so that one part, the other part to it also highlights that it's only within certain categories. And good to see that potentially some of the critical categories, there were 0 fails there.
Yes, sir. So those are the highlights of what SOD does. Like the categories are listed. I believe there's 8 categories, if I counting correctly, or maybe or 2 more. But those are the focus when they're out in the field. You know, it's all about constitutional. We want to ensure that our officers are policing constitutionally, and that's what the focus has been when we're conducting the field observations of folks.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche?
Thank you. Just a quick question. So I'm assuming that these tests correspond to some sort of like standard operating practices or procedures for like whatever you're testing. So how often is it that these officers get trained in those, procedures? Does that make sense? I mean, are we testing something that they're just like, say they're put at the front desk, right? Are they trained to work the front desk? And how to interact with the public and what's expected of them?
So our tests cover broad categories. So we're not, for example, finding, an obscure department policy and going in there to see if an employee is familiar with, every line of the department. So these are all very broad. So if an officer's working the front desk, could they encounter something that maybe they're not familiar with? But generally, when you're working at the front desk, you need to know if somebody reports a crime or is trying to make a personnel complaint, those reports, they need to be able to identify hate incidents versus hate reports. Those are the kind of broad things.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to understand is when you're put in I know that we have testing for different positions, right? So how much do we invest, how much time do we invest in like training someone for a specific position? Right?
So Commissioner, I was at leadership school, civilian leadership school, and a prime example of this is there was detention officers that were put at the front desk to answer phone calls. And one of the issues that came up was the detention officer was never trained in how to take a personnel complaint, but we have them answering phones. So what these tests bring out is, I think to your point, is we have people that have promoted to supervisory positions. I see it now on the civilian side dealing with some of the issues and concerns, but now they're responsible and held accountable for complaint intakes.
Right.
But what the test demonstrated was we needed to provide better training now for the folks that are now promoted into positions to where they're being held accountable for complaint intakes. So to your point, it not only it's there to hold folks accountable, but it also highlights issues and concerns that when we talk to the individuals involved in these incidents, it highlights some department deficiencies in which we can better to ensure that our employees have a full understanding of what their jobs and roles are. So we take that into consideration. We can't assume that every person working a front desk has the same ability. If it's a
Yeah, but
probationer-
let me, thank you, Mike, but let me just add to this, what the captain said. These are broad categories. For our officers, for example, discourtesy, unauthorized force, conduct unbecoming, policy, these are things that these officers get from day one in the academy.
Right.
They're trained on these policies for 6 months. As they get out, as they promote through FTO school, they're revisited. At supervisor school, they're revisited. At lieutenant school, they're revisited. There's ongoing, consistent training in these broad categories. For example, if I'm working the front desk and I've never been trained at the front desk, and somebody brings me a lost wallet, I know I have to do something with that. I need to create a report, book it, give them a receipt, and I haven't worked the desk in too many years. But I just know that intuitively. These are not categories where, how long do you have to keep the light have to stay on in a room before you're required to turn it off, which is a manual section. But that's not what we're testing for. So I appreciate Mike saying we do need, it does help identify some deficiencies, but by and large, these people being tested know what needs to be done, and they just need to be reminded that they have to do the right thing all the time. That's why these audits, inspections are occurring.
I understand, which is great, and we would hope that every employee of the department acts with integrity, because that's probably why they chose to be police officers. But I also think that there's value in, so even the like stops, right? I feel like, yes, like intuitively, like what's a right stop, how to interact, but I think that in the day-to-day, there's like opportunities for training and, that is more specific to that role. So I appreciate both. I appreciate that this is bringing up opportunities to do better. And I'm not even saying like you have to go to training school to learn how to work the front desk, but I think there's opportunities where like we could even have it as part of like, division manuals that are like more for like the day-to-day, not necessarily like procedural and stuff like that. I don't know. I just think that if we're testing, there's opportunities to highlight where we could provide some more support and training, as well as like ensuring the integrity of like every single thing that we do, because it's just part of our function. So, but I appreciate that.
Thank you. Commissioner Briggs, did you have any additional questions?
I think it's been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will, Chief Rimkunis, I will highlight one thing that you had said about how people know in the department that these integrity tests are happening, and kind of that in and of itself holds them to a higher standard. And I was on a ride along and someone was waving us down, and we were headed one place, and the sergeant said, no, there are integrity tests that are conducted to make sure there is no kind of neglect of duty if someone is waving you down and trying to get that attention. So I think that messaging alone is helpful, because everyone knows the standard that they're being held accountable for, both doing the right thing when no one is watching and also when someone is watching. So thank you for all those that you are doing. And with that, I would move that we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. The report is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will now go into closed session. What do we do? We have one closed session.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session
I think the closed session. We got an email saying that.
to discuss item number 5A1 in accordance to Government Code 54957.
Okay, the commission has completed its closed session items, and we will have a report out by the interim executive director. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Item 5A1, law enforcement related injury 023-23. At the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on April 23rd, 2024, during the closed session, the board adopted the following findings on a 3-0 vote. For tactics, tactical debrief, 2 police officers 3 and 1 sergeant 1. For less lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 1. Sorry, correction, 1 police officer 3.
Thank you. And with that, I move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.